there in the cache. As I explained in the human world, I have 100 possible entry data units, and in the cache there is space only for one. So one of these potential candidates that will map to the same entry in the cache might be in the cache, but how do you know which one? So then you have to store some information. You need to store information about what particular element you have in the cache, so one of those 10, right? So one of those 10, you only need one decimal digit to distinguish, right? But for the entire memory, you need 2 digits, okay? Because it's 100. So the first digit, you use it as an index in the cache. And only the second digit, the more significant digit, will be used as actually a tag. So you don't have to store the entire address in order to know what data element from the RAM is in the cache. Okay? So you remove the bits that you use as an index and only store the other bits. So we're talking about something which is a tag, and it will be stored in that entry of the cache. It's not the data that we are going to use for computation, it's data that helping you determine what's already in the cache. And also you want to know whether the entry in the cache is valid. Because you start with something which there's no data there, right? You just have zeros or random data, who knows? So then how do you know that it's 0 doesn't mean actually the copy of the memory at that address 0? So you have to have some other indication telling you that this valid data or not valid data. And then we have a valid bit, which 0, if everything is initialized to 0, it means the cache entry is not valid. Once you write something there, you can turn this bit to 1. So then you'll know there is some valid data in the cache. Okay? So now let's go quickly through some examples. We have also 8 blocks, and in every block you have 1 word per block, right? That's the instruction memory cache that I tried to explain a little bit in the beginning. And then this is the initial state. So you have indices, 8 entries of 3 bits for the index, and you have a valid bit here which is not valid, okay, it's 0. And then you have space for the tag and you have space for the data. So how many bits do you need for the tag? How many bits do you need for the data? For the data we already know because it says it's 1 word block. So 1 word means 4 bytes multiplied by 8, so 32 bits. Okay, you have 32 bits here. How many bits here? I don't know. Depends on the address. So if it's 32-bit address, out of these 32 bits, you're going to use 3 bits for the index. So technically, everything else will be assigned to the tag. But in reality, because we address the memory in bytes, not in words, in 1 word, I have 4 different bytes. So I have 2 bits to distinguish which byte here, okay? 2 bits to determine the offset of the data in the data, okay? 2 bits plus 3 bits here, so 5 bits, and then take out of the 32 bits 5 bits, and you get the number of bits that you have to store here in the tag, okay? So there are 3 components, okay? So now, let's see what happens. We have a word that the address 22, right? And then 22, this is the value, the binary address of 22. You can do the arithmetics if you wish, right? And then immediately I know it's useless to divide modulo 8 because I know that the last 3 bits are actually telling me which end, right? So 110 is here, and here we are putting something like tag is 10. So here it's simplified. So actually the offset is not taken into account, but in the real situations and in the questions you have on the test, of course, you have to account for all three components. So the offset has to be there and properly calculated. Okay, so this is simplified just to convey the idea. So now what happens? You know where you want to write it, you put the data here, okay, which will be this coming from this the memory address, okay, it comes from the RAM. Okay? The data you find at this address in the RAM, you take it and put it here. Okay? So this assumes that it's a word memory, okay? So we don't have indices, we just work with full words. Okay? And this is 10 to 1, so the data is valid. So when I go and want to read some data, and it's not in the cache, of course, I have space here, I'll put it in the cache. You spend the time to read something, waited long time to read from the RAM memory. Of course, you just save it in the cache, just in case you'll need it soon again, right? Okay, so then the policy is everything I bring from the RAM memory, I'll try to put it in the cache. And for a while, it works very nicely. So next step, another address. Again, miss, I'll put it here, right? So next one, miss, I put it there. And now what happens here? It's, I want this binary address, okay? And it's miss, but there was something here, right? In the previous line. So it's valid, but it doesn't come from the memory address that you want to read your data. So now what do? You can just read the data from the RAM and let the processor CPU use it and do nothing here, right? Leave it as it is, in the hope that this data will be needed again. But because of this time locality, we expect that the most recently read data will be needed sooner than other previously written read data. So then it might be better just to replace this with the new hit. So you have a miss, but now you're going to replace this data with the newly read data because it's more recent. It refers to a different place in the memory. So it's just time locality, okay? We're not interested how far this piece of data in the main memory. So then you override to change here. And you keep doing this, okay? You keep doing this and you see how the cache actually works. So you can do some examples. So the purpose of this course is not to go in all details about how this cache works. Actually, things are much more complicated that we're going to discuss and discuss in the book. Actually, caching is a very widely used strategy, and it works for virtual memory, it works for virtual machines, so everything is basically based on some types of caching, okay? And there are also other ideas which are the elaborated version of caching, which is hashing, okay? Hash tables and things like that, and it comes to encoding and so those things you're going to get back to in more advanced courses during your third year, operating system, other courses, right? So what we really want to know is this very, very basic and general idea. How is it actually implemented in hardware? Okay, this is what we want to know. Of course, we'll have some examples because if you are presented with this diagram without any background and ideas about what is it for and how it's supposed to work, then it's not very useful. So this is how the cache is actually implemented in hardware. So you realize that when you are using this cache, you want to do this basically in one cycle if possible, okay, with minimum delay. So there is no time for the CPU to go and do some comparison or read data from the cache or do anything, okay? You want to minimize all possible delays. So you need hardware that will instantly, so in parallel with the circuits of the CPU, will do the job, okay, in parallel. So what kind of circuit? So what you want to do is to get the field subset of the address that is the index, okay? So, well, you know how it works. Just redirect some of the bits of the address. That's in the CPU structure already. You know how it works. You've done it in Verilog. So, this address is just extracted from the address that's issued for access to memory, and it's used as an entry index to the memory. So the cache is a type of memory. So you know how memory ROM works, right? So once you present this address to the memory unit, it will deliver on the output. So on the input you present the address, on the output you get the data, the register. Okay? You can have even several inputs and several outputs, and they are delivered in parallel, right? Okay, so this is something like a register file, okay? Present the address, it will deliver the result. So it will deliver all the bits that are here in this entity. So then you want to do something. So the bits that form the tag, you want to compare these bits with the tag from the address. So how do you compare? You want to compare, so you need a comparator. Okay. How do you compare? What kind of circuit? Exclusive OR. Exclusive OR is doing exactly what you want, okay? If you want to be more precise, you can invert the exclusive OR, so then you will get exactly 1, okay? Because exclusive OR is what? 0, 0 is 0 and 1, 1 is 0, right? So you invert it and you get only in the case that both are 0, so both are 1s, you get 1, right? So basically you have a huge, many 2-input XOR gates, okay? The first one goes to the bit 12, and here you get this bit. The second one goes to this one, and then to this one. So you have many XOR gates negated eventually, right? And they do this in parallel, compare all the bits of the tag. How many bits? 30 bits, for example, right? For 64 bits machines, huge. So you have many XOR gates negated. And then in parallel, you get a sequence of zeros or ones. So only if and only if all these outputs are zeros, then it's equal, right? Because 0, 0 is 0 and 1, 1 is 0, right? So only if everything is 0, there is a match. So you can just get an OR of all the outputs. So you need how many? Okay, 30, for example, inputs. And you get one signal as an output. And that signal is the result. So you will get, if you get at least 1, 1 in the inputs, then it means that one bit is different, right? So enough, no match. And of course you can invert the signal or that. So you don't have to have all the XOR gates inverted and then using AND. You can have them as they are, and instead of using AND, you use OR, the Morgan's law, okay? And then you can invert just once the signal, depending on what you want to do. So this is the comparison, okay? And then you need one more signal to compare what? To block this or to allow it depending on the valid bit. Okay? If the valid bit is 0, this is blocked, so there is no hit. Okay? If it's 1, it depends on the comparison. Okay? So the valid bit must be 1, and the comparison should bring you positive results, so it's equal. And then you get a hit, so you can get a signal that tells the CPU that the data is here, so actually no need to wait or to bring data or anything. So this is the way the hardware works. Where the data comes from here, right? From this point. So, this is basically the way it works. Now let's see in a graphical way how the address is actually structured. Offset, index, tag. So we're talking about 64 blocks, 16 bytes per block, and you can do some calculations here. So 64 blocks, 16 bytes per block. So 16 bytes per block, this is somewhere here in the 16 bytes per block. This is the offset, okay? If you have 16 bytes, you need 4 bits to determine which byte. Right? So here you have offset 4 bits. It maps to the 16 bytes per block, okay? And then you have 64 blocks. So this is the sign, the number of entries. So 2 to power 6, right? 16 multiplied by 2, 32 multiplied by 2, 64, okay? 64, this 4 times more, 4 bits, 6 bits, right? And then everything that is left is the tag. So something wrong here. The authors of the book, when they updated the architecture, so they increased to 63 bits, right? They forgot to change this number. So this probably adds to 32, right? Right? So they changed this number, but here you have to add 32, right? So it's full of typos like this. Little by little, they're changing. So if you know what you are looking for, what you're trying to do, so everything is fine. If you're just trying to reinvent the wheel, so Prof, why this is, so I don't know how it works. Of course, mistakes happen, okay? Okay, so now, you have choice here. Larger blocks or smaller blocks, more entries or less entries. So there is a constant here that depends on the current state of the technology. So basically, cost is the leading thing, cost energy, right? So we know that a cache fast enough to be directly accessible without significant delays by the CPU, okay, can only be, it's only affordable or meaningful if it's something like, for example, 5 kilobytes, right? Or 10 kilobytes, or 16 kilobytes, okay? There is a number. In 1.5 years, this number will probably double or something, right? It still applies to that particular domain. So then you have a choice. If you have this amount of memory, then you can have more entries, but each entry can hold less data. Or you can have less entries, but each entry can hold more data. So where is the good balance? The memory is the same, right? And then everything changes. Once you start increasing, you start increasing the number of entries, you'll need more bits for this, right? So you'll need more bits for this. It means that you have to store less bits, so you're saving memory in some sense, right? But you're not storing this, right? And you're not storing this. But look, the sum of this is basically the size of the cache, right? Because it's what? It's like number of rows number of entries multiplied by number of columns, the index, the number of bytes. So this is more or less a constant. So you're not saving anything, right? Each entry has additional validity, for example, right? And then the size. So you can do different things, but ultimately the size of the memory in each entry and the number of entries. So this is a parameter that is determined by different means. For example, you want to, well, we'll come to that if we have time. Okay, so for example, if you have a larger entry in the cache, presumably you're bringing more data at any instant, right? So if it's more than the word size, if it's less than the word size, you're bringing the entire word anyway, so you're losing, right? So it doesn't make sense to make the entry length or size smaller than the word size, the width of the bus of the texture, right? So do you want to make it even larger than that? There are benefits, some benefits. For example, architecture, memory architectures that will allow you to bring consecutive words at much faster speed in comparison to when you just request them separately. So then you're getting as a bonus a sequence of words at any request, right? So you're not wasting time to wait for the consecutive words to come, but you're blocking a larger amount of memory, right? So then you may have more misses. So things like that. So what happens on cache hit? CPU just proceeds normally with a minimal delay. Okay. If there is a miss, stall the pipeline, right? If it's the miss in the instruction memory, there's not much you can do, right? If it's the miss in the data, so data, complete the data, wait until the data access is complete, right? Okay? So, that's what happens. So now, what happens if you're going to write in some memory? We've been talking about reading, right? So now, what happens if you try to write? If you try to write, we have again two options, right? Hit or miss. If it's a miss, well, bring the data from the memory, write to the cache, and then what you're going to do? I'm going to write it back to the memory. If that's the case, why are you bringing it to the cache? So, if you're going to bring it to the cache and modify it, and then you keep it in the cache in the hope that there will be another overwriting and another overwriting at exactly the same location, it's not so unusual. If you have a counter, that's exactly what happens, right? But it's not common if you have just some data analysis updates and things like that, right? You don't go and update the value. So in very special situations like counters, you have that, okay? So then that most of the time, this idea to update in the cache and delay the storage back to the memory, it's very good for something that changes often like counters, but it's not good in the general case, right? So then there are two different policies here. And depending on the way you use this data, you may want to apply different policies. Pay attention. There is no writing when it comes to instruction memory, right? So this only applies to data memory. So now, what happens? Another possibility is just to, you always write through. So if there is a miss, you just go and write to the memory, don't even bring it to the cache. Or you bring it to the cache, but then let the cache through the next cycle, write it back to the RAM. So the cache is constantly trying to update the data in the RAM according to the writes. So this is good because this can be done in parallel. The CPU is running and the cache is communicating with the memory, right? Upper side of the cycle and down side of the cycle or something like that. Okay? So it's not such a bad idea. You can parallel something like a pipeline. Okay? And then of course, so this is right. So then we need another indicator here. Whether the cache value is clean or dirty. So if the cache value is not reflected back, written back to the memory, it's basically dirty, right? You cannot do anything. You cannot just discard that entry before the value is reflected to the RAM. So when we have a read, miss, right? And you have a miss, but there is a valid data there. So then you cannot just bring new data there if it's dirty, right? So then things become more complicated. You need just another bit which is about writing and then what policy you apply. If you apply write through policy, no delayed writes, you don't need extra bit. So we stop here. This is not going to be discussed in further detail. It's not going to be on the test. So we stick to the standard, very, very basic idea of cache when it's mostly for reading. Okay? So think about the instruction memory cache. Okay? There is no writing issue. Okay? Okay. So this is a write back and write through. I explained about write through, so now write back is when it's dirty and what happens. Okay? And then I explained this, so we're not going to go into more details. And of course, there are architectures that are well organized and designed to work effectively with caches. And here is something that actually represents some schematics to exploit the cache optimization. So it's more complex, but the basic ideas are already known, right? So the initial variant that I showed. Okay. So now we'll proceed with. There is about here something about memory supporting caches and something performance and how to calculate, so depending on this probability to get a hit or a miss, which can be just, it comes out based on the ratio of the size of the cache and the RAM memory. And then you can estimate how many misses or how many hits you have on average, and then you get some estimates of performing increase. But of course, it depends on the type of the code you're going to replace, right? And whether it's code. So these are just rough estimates. Here is how to measure some numbers. I strongly recommend to go and read this when you have time. But this is the last lecture, and we still have things to do. So this is not something that is really essential. So I'm not planning to have this point with some questions about that on the test. But some basic things about structure of cache organization, how much data you need, so depending on the initial numbers. Right? I'll show you some also. So these things, they are good to know. You can always go back to the book and look up the formulas if you forget. So there is nothing to learn actually here. It's pretty much standard. Okay? And then I will just time and this. So what I want to show you here is another idea about organizing caches. which is again hardware related, and this is not going to be on the test because it's more advanced, and this is actually coming in your future classes, more advanced computer science. So, major issue, we have this issue that every address is just modulo something, right? In the powers of 10, I explained already. So you have 10 different addresses, and if it's anything that ends at 0, they are competing, right? And you have more accesses to memory addresses that end at 0 than others, then you end up with constantly needing to replace the values in the cache. So you have a lot of misses. So now, what if I have like 2 places, or even 3 or 4 places for addresses that end at 0? So I don't want to change the address, right? I don't want to make it more granular. So what happened in binary world, instead of 3 bits, I'll make like 4 bits or 5 bits. So this decreases the number of components that will compete for the same place, right? But I'm thinking about doing something fundamentally different, right? I'm saying so the number of components that will compete for this space is fixed, right? I'll just provide more space. Instead of 1 entry, all the ending 0 addresses map to 1 entry, they'll map to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I'm free to choose, right? So then, how do you do that? If you have 2 elements, we'll call it a 2-way associated cache, right? And 4 elements, 4-way. So then, you're presenting an address, okay, and you have 4 elements there. And then, how do you know you want to, in time 1, the same time as if you had only 1-way cache, this is directly mapped. Yeah? You want to get an answer whether one of those 4 elements hits or not. Of course, you cannot have 2 hits because the tags are unique. Okay? So you have to do this comparison with the tag and 4 different tags there in parallel, and then eventually you'll get 1 hit or 0 hits. You cannot have more than 1. So then the idea is what? The idea is to have this hardware replicated 4 times. So you have more like places, but it's not a sequential search. It's hardware that serves this in at the same time. So you're not creating more space for the cache, right? Because the amount of memory is limited. So you're increasing the number of entries, of elements in your entry, you have to decrease the number of entries. But it's a different type of organization, okay? So here are the 2 extremes, directly mapped that we discussed, fully associative. So then it can be any element, right? So it means that you have to compare in parallel all the tags of all the entries in that. And this is of course more reasonable when you have like 2-way etc. associated, 4-way or something like that. We usually do pounds. Okay. And here is how it's structured and things like that. So I'm not going to go into detail. We want to see more about the test. Here is an example. So what happens basically is that, yeah, you'll get a hit. Okay, you'll get a miss, right? But then there are empty elements you can put there, right? So you actually, you get a miss, you bring the new element. You get a miss, you bring the new element. You get a miss, you bring the new element. And only after that, your miss will force you to replace something, right? Okay, so this works, of course, for writing too. Okay. So it's getting more complicated. And then how much associativity is actually good? If you have one way, if this is the improvement, so based on some initial conditions, this is the improvement, 10%. If you make it two-way, it goes to, so decreases miss rate. Okay, so this is the miss rate. So it's a 10%, slightly over 10% miss rate. If you have two-way associative cache, so the amount of memory in your cache is the same. Okay, so this is the point here. With the same amount of memory, if you just restructure, wire it in a different way, you will get less misses. So how much? About 2% less misses, right? Of course, 2% less misses is not just 2% increase in performance, right? Because the cost for this miss, it depends on how slower your main memory is. And of course, you'll have second level cache, third level cache in order to minimize delays and things like that. But you get something like from 10 to 8% improvement. And then this becomes negligible, right? So it turns out that going from one-way cache to two-way cache makes sense, but going up to four-way or eight-way doesn't really increase significantly performance, right? Negligible. So then going from here to here, it means that you have to double all the circuits for the comparing and everything, right? So there is a cost to pay and it consumes energy. So then you might be better off actually by putting this money into more memory for the cache. So how much more memory you put here without doing the complication, the circuit to control it like associated way. So it's not really clear. But this looks reasonable, and two-way caches are very common, and higher number of sets then becomes not so common. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the diagram now. What do we have here? You have 1, 2, 3, 4 basically caches, right? It's replicated. And everything has all the circuits that you need, okay? So you're doing, in the set, you're doing these things in parallel, okay? This address comes here and it's selecting here and here and here and here, the entire row, okay? It's one row in the cache, which holds 4 values, right? And you want to, so you have different tags, right? For example, one is 10, another is 20, another is 30, another is 70, right? Everything ends at 0. If it's here, it will end at something different, like 5, right? Everything here ends 5, 5, 5, 5. So if I have 10 of those here in this decimal version, then it's fully